My name is Cami Thomas, and I use they, them pronouns. I am with Public Allies Milwaukee, which is a 10-month nonprofit apprenticeship program organization. The Public Allies mission is to create a just and equitable society and the diverse leadership to sustain it. Sort of thinking of diversity as when you're throwing a party, thinking about who you want to invite to the party, right? You want your party to be diverse. But being inclusive is more about the hand that you extend out in order to invite those folks in. And so when you have an inclusive space, it is not only a space that has diverse identities present, it's a space that honors the culture and experiences that those identities come from, that those people come from, and that the space is a space that those people feel comfortable coming to.
Hello, Raina Andrews here, Chief Hunger Fighter of the Healthy Food Movement. I go by the pronouns she, her, and hers. The Healthy Food Movement is a wellness company focused on food security in food literacy in underserved communities. Inclusion is feeling welcomed as a part of it. It's the person's response to being able to accommodate you being in that space.
My name is JJ Draper. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I am a public ally for Tikkun Ha'ir and the Jewish Community Center. Inclusion means that all people, regardless of their abilities, disabilities, or healthcare needs, have the right to be respected and appreciated as valued members of their communities. While diversity is important in bringing together people with different backgrounds and perspectives, you can create an inclusive environment that celebrates the differences of people, where people can show up in their individual ways while feeling like they belong.
Implicit bias is something that is innate to human beings. It is part of our evolutionary, whatever it is, that has helped us get along. The same thing. It's something that we have to be aware of, that we have to actively fight against, and make sure that when we're engaging with other people, that we're not just relying on that reptilian brain, gotta put you in a box to feel comfortable with what I'm doing, and that we're actively seeing people for who they are and checking the things that we've learned from society about those groups of people that might be negative or bad.
Hi, I'm Sammy Stein Abner, Executive Director of Tikkun Ha'ir of Milwaukee. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Everybody has some kind of implicit bias, and that the first step is being able to recognize that we are not perfect, that we all come with things that we need to work on, and the biases that we have might influence our behavior unintentionally to be harmful to somebody else. And so that is a starting point that we need to take stock in before we move forward in creating a space where we can trust.
So then we might go into a certain situation wanting to do an action or a behavior that we meant well, right? But maybe it doesn't come off well, and not even come off well, but maybe that person was just wrong. And then often what happens is we go back and we say, well, I didn't intend to harm you, and so everything should be fine because that was my intent. If you stop there, then you'll keep on harming people in that way. Because if the impact is harm, then on the other side of that coin, I'm experiencing harm. So just because you didn't intend to cause me harm doesn't mean that I'm not hurt now. So now I'm hurt, and what are we gonna do from here? Well, the person who caused the harm needs to go back and learn how to not cause that harm again.
Within the Jewish community, we identify that we are coming from a perspective of wanting to pursue tikkun olam, of wanting to pursue tzedek and justice, and that while we have these feelings within us and these strong beliefs, that there can be moments where our intentions don't play out into actually creating the positive impact that we want, and instead result in a negative impact. So it's in those situations, it's important that we stop and identify that even though we are coming to the table with a pure heart, that the impact wasn't that, and that means we have to shift our behavior to actually match with our intention.
When being in space with others, it is not realistic to say that a healthy work environment will come without conflict. Conflicts will arise, so it is important to address how we handle conflict in order to move forward. Intent speaks to our intentions, or what we mean when we do or say certain things. We recognize what we mean when we act. However, our intentions do not outweigh or erase the overall impact, which is about how something that we've said or done affects someone else. When apologizing to someone, it doesn't matter what our intentions were when we've hurt someone else. What matters is that the person was affected by what was done. By choosing to focus on our individual intentions, we are centering ourselves in the apology. It can come off as dismissive of how our actions made someone else feel by hyper-focusing on what we meant. Taking accountability of our actions by acknowledging the harm that was caused and actively working towards being better in the future are important components to consider when working with others in a healthy environment.
It's okay to ask folks from a different identity group from you questions to get to know them better, but it's also not their job, and it is a lot of labor for those folks to explain their life, explain their identity. Now, some people will want to do that, and some folks, it just depends on the time of day, right? Like, there's no exact way to know if someone wants to share with you. So it's okay to ask, but if folks say no, to know to respect that and honor that and move on to another way of learning.
My name is Heidi Gould. I use the pronouns she and her, and I am the director of the Jewish Community Pantry. There's a myriad of reasons why someone might need emergency food, and it's very easy to kind of default to certain stereotypes or reasons why we think someone might need food. But I think primarily we need to lead with what the community member and guest is telling us and sharing. We can also start by not making assumptions of our volunteers, asking questions of them, asking what pronouns they would like used, asking what they would like their experience to look like. The more we can start from that point and asking and being inquisitive, I think the more welcoming and inclusive we can be as a volunteer.
Another example is to stop assuming someone's pronouns. Pronouns are a simple way of addressing someone without saying their name. For example, my mother's pronouns are she, her, hers. To use these correctly in a sentence, you would say, she is going to the store. Her cat needs more food. The car in the parking lot is hers. My pronouns, however, are they, them, theirs. The pronoun they is not just a plural pronoun. It can be a singular pronoun and has been for a long time. To use this set correctly in a sentence, you would say, they just had their lunch. Their favorite soup was on the menu. The wallet on the table is theirs. A microaggression is a comment or action that negatively targets a marginalized group of people. A microaggression can be intentional or accidental. It is a form of discrimination. For example, a microaggression can look like touching a person of color's hair because you view it to be more exotic or outside of your everyday experience, or commenting on how well a person of color speaks because you anticipate that they will sound less intelligent or less eloquent than you. A microaggression does not mean that the comment was minor or less significant. It means that it often is very subtle and overlooked when it still perpetuates the same level of harm as overt discrimination. Another important aspect of inclusive practices comes down to how we communicate with each other. Communicating healthily and effectively will not only promote a healthy volunteer space, but it strengthens the relationships you will build and helps the overall flow of the work being done. When communicating, especially in a new environment with people you don't know very well, it is best to keep these points in mind. Listen to understand, not to simply respond. Avoid gender-specific words with people that you don't know very well, so as to not misgender someone else. Work on deconstructing your own implicit biases in order to be able to communicate without offending others. Become aware of your own privileges. An example of a privilege that I have is that I am able-bodied. I keep this in mind when thinking of how to make a space or event more accessible for all. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to consciously think about accessibility because it is a privilege that I have. Another thing to keep in mind is to educate yourself before expecting the person in front of you to do it for you. Continue to be open-minded and in the space to learn. And lastly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. There will be times when we mess up, but it's better to hold ourselves accountable and learn from our mistakes, as opposed to making ourselves feel even worse about the harm that we may have caused. Keeping these practices in mind and putting them into practice is a great way to promote a healthy volunteer space and how you interact with people that you are here to serve.